DC's Nuclear Winter Special. This is an 80-page book with 10 short stories, all with different creators. This is an anthology book, so there's lots of different short little stories in here. It is the Nuclear Winter Special, so it is set in wintertime. It's kind of like DC's Christmas book, but they also decided to make it a post-apocalyptic book as well. So you got some interesting stories of the DC universe kind of set in post-apocalyptic times, which I think was a pretty interesting hook to do a story on. Now, if you like anthology series, DC did one a month ago or two around Halloween called DC's Cursed Comics Cavalcade. I did a review on that where I break down all the stories, so check that one out. There was also one a few weeks ago with Batman's Secret Files with a whole bunch of short stories there, so check out my video on that too. So let's get into this issue and I'll break down all the stories. Our first story is about Rip Hunter, who is this guy that travels through time, and it's written by Mark Russell, one of my favorite writers. Now, this story actually serves as the sort of framing device for all the stories, so it sets up all the other small short stories, and they also jump back and forth to this story throughout the book. So Rip Hunter, he's traveled way into the future where it's a post-apocalyptic world and the world's gone to hell. And there's these punk dudes that are super hungry and they want to eat Rip Hunter, kill him and eat him. So Rip Hunter's trying to buy some time. So he has this big time machine. He plugs it into this electric car charging port. And then he's trying to kill time while it charges so he can get out of there. So he tells these crazy hungry people in the future that how about he tells them some stories about, you know, do they like Superman? Do they like Batman? Maybe they want to hear some stories about them. And these guys kind of say like, all right, fine. So all of a sudden Rip Hunter starts telling us some stories, and then we go through all the various individual stories in this book. As a framing device, I thought it worked pretty well, and it also was pretty funny. Mark Russell's a very talented writer, so he was able to poke fun at some of the stories throughout this book. Pretty good. The next story is Batman 666 in Warmth. This one's written by Collin and Jackson Lanzing, art by Giuseppe Camuncoli. Now, this Batman 666, for those of you who don't know, comes from a Grant Morrison Batman issue done in 2007 where Damian Wayne is in the future, Bruce Wayne's dead, and Damian Wayne is now Batman, and he sells his soul to the devil or something, and he can't die, or I don't know. It's hard to remember, it was so long ago. So in this issue, we have this Batman 666. He's in this post-apocalyptic world, and Ra's al Ghul is there, and he's fighting Damian, and he wants to kill Damian, I guess, and he eventually stabs Damian with this sword, but Damian, for some reason, can't die, so he pulls the sword out, and then Ra's al Ghul is kind of defeated by this, and he's like, Damian, why don't you just kill me? And Damian's like, because I'm Batman, and Batman doesn't kill. And that's how this story ends. This one was okay, but I kind of I liked this whole fight between Damian and Ra's al Ghul. I thought it was pretty fun. And it made me try to remember what the hell Batman 666 was about and sort of relive that storyline. So I thought it was okay. Not too bad. Next story is Superman 1 Million in Memory Hearth, written by Steve Orlando, pencils by Brad Walker. I didn't really like this one. I thought it was really confusing, really weird, and didn't really know what was going on. Martian Manhunter was in here, and then it was this weird Superman from the 853rd century or something. Did not dig this one. Next story was this story with the Flash, and it was called Once and Future, written by Jeff Loveness, art by Christian Deuce. This one wasn't that great either. Basically, Reverse Flash says that he's going to destroy the time stream just cause, and he does, and then Flash is just jumping through time and sees a whole bunch of stuff, and that's the end of this story. Whatever. Next story was with Aquaman in Where the Light Cannot Reach. This one wasn't too bad. So basically, it's Aquaman, and he's talking to these scientist dudes, and it's in this post-apocalyptic world where nuclear winter is just reigning over the world. And these scientists tell Aquaman that they had a friend near Greenland that he found some organism in the bottom of the ocean that can like break down radioactive radiation. So if Aquaman goes in the bottom of this ocean, maybe he can find this organism, and then they can use it to get rid of all the nuclear waste. So Aquaman goes to the ocean and he sees all these messed up looking sharks with like 2 heads and stuff. But then at the bottom, he seems like he's maybe getting somewhere and maybe finds some organism that can do what they said it could. And then this story ends on a cliffhanger and it says, "Not the end." But it's kind of annoying. I thought they were going to go back to this story later on in the book, but they didn't. And they probably never will return back to this story. So that was kind of a bummer. In fact, when we go back to Mark Russell's framing device with Rip Hunter, one of the punk guys who's hungry says, that Aquaman story didn't even have an ending. That's kind of lame. So, yeah. Next story was with Supergirl, and it was called The Last Daughters, written by Tom Taylor, art by Tom Denerick. Now, Tom Taylor, I'm a big fan of, and this story was my favorite in this book. It was pretty cool. So, Supergirl is walking around this post-apocalyptic world, and because of all the radiation, there's like a big cloud of smoke covering the world, so she can't get her super abilities because the yellow sun is blocked, which I thought was really cool. She runs across this kid, and she decides to save it and try to help it out and give it a better life and survive this post-apocalyptic world together. They're trying to get to Superman's Fortress of Solitude, which is in the Arctic, but because of the sun, she's basically just a normal person right now. But then eventually she's able to get to a spot where the sun kind of clears and is able to shine through a bit, and it's able to power her up enough so she's able to fly to the North Pole, and she gets that key, opens the Fortress of Solitude, and they get into that rocket that Superman was sent to from Krypton to Earth. They decide to get into that and blast off to another planet together. So I thought that was a really cool, fun story. I love the idea of the clouds and the smoke and the nuclear radiation blocking the sun. So all of a sudden, she's not superpowered anymore. Pretty cool. Next story was with Firestorm, written by Paul Dini, art by Jerry Ordway. This was not too great. I didn't really love it. Basically, Firestorm goes to these androids that are celebrating Christmas, and the androids are maybe like evil, but they're going to die one day. I don't know, whatever. Next story was with Commandy in Northern Lights, written by Phil Hester, art by Ann Parks. I didn't really love this one either. I kind of tuned out, didn't really dig it. Next story was with Catwoman, called 9 Lives, art by Amekle Napulan. Written by Cecil Castellucci. This one was alright. It's basically Catwoman, and she's with this girl who's the daughter of Holly Robinson, one of Catwoman's friends, and they are robbing a whole bunch of stuff in Gotham City in this post-apocalyptic world, trying to get supplies. And Holly wants to give them away so people can like survive, but Catwoman's like, you gotta look out for your own. But then in the end, Catwoman has a change of heart. She goes and steals some supplies and gives it out to a whole bunch of needy people, and that's the end of this story. That was alright. It wasn't that great. Next story is with Green Arrow, and this one was also my second favorite. I thought it was pretty good. So this one's called Green Arrow in the Birds of Christmas Past, Present, and Future, written by Dave Wilegaz, art by Scott Collins. So in this one, it's set in the future, and Green Arrow, he apparently left the Justice League. He didn't want to be a part of it anymore. He didn't agree with it. And now it's years, maybe even decades later. Some of the Justice League members have passed, and they're having this annual Christmas party, and they invite Green Arrow. I guess usually they would leave him off the guest list, but they decided to invite him this year, and he decides to show up, and he is kind of a Scrooge. He's kind of very grumpy all the time, so he goes to this party anyway. He sees Hawkman there. They have a little argument. It's pretty funny. Then Green Arrow wants to leave, but all of a sudden Dinah's there, Black Canary, who he usually has like a romantic relationship with, and they sort of start reminiscing about the good old days, and they share a dance. They talk about the Batcave and how it smelled like bat dung, and when they told Batman he made a face and got really angry that his Batcave smelled. They start coming together. They are under the mistletoe and they laugh about it, and they decide that they're going to stay in touch, and it is kind of a very heartwarming ending. So I thought this story was really good. After this story ended, we go back to that Rip Hunter framing device. Rip Hunter's time machine has finally powered. He gets in it and he escapes these guys that wanted to kill and eat him. But because it's Christmas, he decides to give them a sandwich he had in his time machine, so at least they can eat. And that is the end of this book. So yeah, I thought this was a pretty decent book. Some of the stories I was neutral on, some I hated, and there was a few I really liked. I think that's pretty good for an anthology book. I think that's the best you can do. So I recommend it. I would give it a 7 out of 10. Not too bad. It was a little long, 80 pages. It was kind of a slog to get through in the end. And you really have to get through some really bad stories to get to the good ones. But I had a decent time with it. So yeah, I would recommend it.